we're going to make a start, just because I know that some people are just taking their time to join. So, hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Nice to hear that it's sunny in Exeter. I'm very, very jealous because it is not sunny here in London at all. It's very cloudy. But thank you so much for joining this afternoon, whether it is that you have just finished lectures or if you finished school. Just to introduce myself to you, first of all, my name is Trish. I'm head of London at CoachBright, and I am the person that has been emailing and setting up all the things around the InSight series. And if you are with us, joining us for this webinar for the first time, welcome. This is something that happens on a monthly basis. So the next one will happen, which will happen is in March. And the purpose of this InSight series is just a chance for you to meet someone who's working in a field that you might want to work in and ask them some questions, find out about how they got into the job that they're in at the moment, what training they might have to have done, what does a really good day look like, what does the worst day look like, what advice they might be able to give you in terms of like finding things like work experience. All sorts of things like that are going to be covered here this afternoon. We'll be running up until 5 o'clock. And the way that this will run is that Ash, who is here, is going to go through a presentation, and they're going to talk to you about how the route into nursing, and then they'll also be able to answer questions as well. For all of you throughout, you are allowed to ask questions throughout. So it doesn't mean that you wait up until the end. And the way to do that for this is if you find at the bottom of your bar, there is a button which says Q&A. If you click on that, that is where we'll be receiving all the questions. So if you've got any questions throughout, even if you've got questions now, pop them in. And what will happen is at the end, and I'll be asking Ash all of the questions that you have. Amazing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to be quiet because I'm not the interesting person here. I'm going to hand over to Ash, who is going to talk us through the presentation.
Okay, no problem. So my current job, I am currently a practice nurse. So I work in a GP. But before that, before I came into practice nursing, let me tell you a bit about myself. So I grew up in Birmingham. I went to Stourbridge College, wasn't much of a fan of A-levels. So I switched to a BTEC and went to Bourneville College. After college, I went to the University of Nottingham and did a nursing degree. I was there for 3 years. After I finished my nursing degree, I went straight into A&E and I worked there for a year while still in Nottingham. After the year, I moved back home to Birmingham and I worked in oncology. For all of you that don't know what oncology is, I worked with cancer patients. And then in my spare time, whilst doing a full-time job, I did a bit of agency work, which is part-time work in A&E. Then I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to a new change, a bit more education. So that's when I switched to working in a GP. And now I'm currently going through a postgraduate certificate in primary healthcare alongside working. So what is it I do as a practice nurse? So I'm currently at work now. So today I'll have a clinic that starts at 8:30 in the morning, finishes at 6:30. Sounds a bit boring, can be a bit boring, but I have a variety of things that I can do. So I do child immunisations. So all of you would have had your immunisations when you were a child, from the age of 8 weeks to the age of 4. That's when I do your vaccinations. And then the rest of the time you have that when you're in school. Then you've got your cervical screening. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but I'm sure you've all heard of the HPV vaccine. Okay, so this is mainly for females. Once they hit the age of 24, we start giving them cervical screening regularly every 3 years. I also do sexual health advice. Okay, so all that. And then more seriously, I do the long-term health conditions. So people with asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure, I look after them. So I teach them with asthma about their technique, pick which inhalers will best suit them, manage their conditions. Same with diabetes, blood tests, their insulin, same with high blood pressure, making sure they're not at risk of stroke and everything. And then on top of that, I do some ear care. So I look into everyone's ears and see all that green, nasty wax that builds up. And I use something like this to look into it. And then for blood pressure, I've got this nice little machine, but I'm a bit old school. So I get the stethoscope out around my neck, listen to their everything. And then lastly, just because it's a GP doesn't mean we don't get poorly patients, okay? So we do get poorly patients, and then we've got an ox pulse, which measures your pulse and your oxygen sats, especially for those people with asthma and COPD. This can come in handy. We also do routine blood tests, ECGs. So mainly, most of my patients I see are over the age of 16, unless I'm doing immunisations. Then I'll see those under the age of 4. I have been working with the flu vaccine. I haven't personally given a COVID vaccine, but I have done my training to give it. And there's probably many, many more things that I do as a practice nurse that I just can't think of off the top of my head. It's a variety job. So the pathway that I took, as I said, I went to college. And then when I was at college, I was looking into doing medicine, but I realised medicine wasn't the right one for me. I looked into doing paramedic, but it still didn't feel right. So I thought about nursing because someone suggested it to me. So I did nursing. Originally, I was going to do a 4-year master's degree, but I switched to 3 years, 4 years of a degree at uni. Just wasn't me, but 3 years suited me right. So with nursing, just as I was going in, they were making it compulsory that you did some volunteering beforehand. So I volunteered in a hospital and I volunteered for St John's Ambulance. If you're going to volunteer, I'd say St John's Ambulance. The amount of times that I went to football matches and stuff like that and just sat and watched. Obviously, I was there to work, but it is a perk of working with them. So after my degree, in my last year, they do this thing where they help you apply for jobs. So you apply for jobs, so you definitely guaranteed a job after uni, okay? Whether you guaranteed it in the place that you want to work is a different story because most places don't take newly qualified like A&E. I was quite lucky when I went. So after uni, job, and then training doesn't start once. Training and education doesn't finish once you start your job. You still get to do postgraduates, you still got your masters, you can do PhD, you can do additional courses like taking bloods, reading ECG machines, advanced basic life support and stuff like that. It's all added in the job and extra qualifications. Like for me, I've got a qualification in chemotherapy, so I can give chemotherapy. Not many people can give chemotherapy because of the kind of drug toxicity it is. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. So these pictures, this is just me at work, to be honest. It does look like I'm playing around, but I'm being serious. So this one with me with the mask and the gown and the socks, this is what I used to have to dress up in when I was giving chemotherapy and a chemotherapy would spill on the floor because of the type of chemical it was. I had to dress from head to toe. So pretty much how they're dressing, similarity now. And then I joined the Army Reserves when I was at uni, which helped with major trauma education, which was just a bit on top, made a bit more knowledge and everything. But that was also an option that I wanted to take going into nursing. And that's pretty much it. Any questions? Let me stop sharing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ash. Could you show us again, like the different bits of equipment and stuff? Because I think you won't be able to see it because you were sharing your screen at the time.
Okay.
All of us.
So you've got your osteoscope. Check your ears. That's the one with the disgusting earwax that people get in their ears. I'm joking. It's okay. So for your COPD and asthma patients, you've got your pulse and oxygen sats. I am alive, I am breathing. It's just taking it a while to read. Then blood pressure machine. Okay. I don't like using this one. So I'll go old fashioned and listen with the stethoscope. And then my pretty much working day is, which is better than I thought was better than a hospital. I get my own little office, and this is where I'll stay all day. And that's an ECG machine. In my room for the day. It's practically my room every day that I'm in work.
Oh, thank you, Ash. I didn't realize we were going to get like a tour of the room, which is pretty cool. So we've got a couple of questions that have like popped in. Thanks, guys. First one we've got is, how do you manage the stress from the workload?
I am not a very stressful person, so I'm pretty chilled and relaxed. Most people say if I relax anymore, I'd be horizontal. But stress, before COVID, you used to be able to go out and take out your stress reliefs then. Now, kind of have to do other alternatives. I find walking and talking helps. Work-wise, the only time here it gets stressful is when I'm running behind clinics. I see a lot of patients, each one's 10-minute slots, and then it's back to back, back to back. And if it runs over, it means I run over, which means I can't go home on time.
Next question we've got from Labour is, how long did it take you to finish uni? And then what kind of stuff do they cover like during your degree as well?
My uni degree was 3 years. It doesn't run like a normal uni degree, so when everyone was off at certain times, I was still there. Not a bad thing. It was okay. It's just what I chose. So they teach you about communication. From the start, you're going to be put into working in a hospital. So I always found like the theory didn't make sense until I was actually in there doing the stuff. So they teach you about communication, they teach you about leadership, they teach you about innovation, they teach you about patience, all sorts of stuff.
And would you say there's like lots and lots of coursework and exams, or like what's the balance of that like?
Every uni's different. I didn't do a lot of exams. I had a few practical exams and one written exam in the 3 years, and the majority of it was coursework. But every uni's different. I think BCU do a lot of exams.
Ah, okay. And once you had finished at uni, did you go kind of straight into, like, how does the process work from once you to going into nursing?
I finished uni in September. A lot of people that I finished uni with went straight into work in that September. I had a bit of a break just to raise some money, and then I was in work in the January after.
Another question we've got here is something about the working hours as well. So do you work really long hours, and what are the average working hours like?
So with hospital work, it's shift patterns, long days, okay, the occasional short days, but it's mainly long days. GPs here, I could work short days like Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, but I chose to do it in 3 long days. So I work 8:30 till 6:30. Hospital, I think it's like 7 till 7, something like that.
And what made you switch from being, so I know that you talked about being an A&E and then you did oncology and now you're working in a GP. What made you decide to do the shift? And do you think that working as a GP nurse is much better than the kind of other work that you were doing before?
Not necessarily better, different. I do miss A&E every now and again. I do like this excitement. I miss the people that I worked with in oncology. But for me personally, I wanted to do my prescribing, be a nurse practitioner eventually, but obviously that's not offered there. So I had to move to somewhere where I could get that training for it to be done.
Sure. And if you're thinking, so I know you spoke about like A&E kind of being like the first time that you like started. Was that the first time that you started doing the nursing? And if so, what was your first day like being on the job? What was that like?
My first job, yeah, straight out of nursing was A&E. I said I always wanted to work in A&E from the day that I stepped my foot into uni, and that's where I was going to go, no matter what anyone said. And that's where I went. Luckily enough, the A&E that I went to accepted newly qualified and had a preceptorship program, which just means that you work with someone and they teach you all the stuff. And I did that for 8 weeks before I was let loose with any patients on my own. However, if any of you have seen 24 hours in A&E, my first shift after my preceptorship, so newly nurse, done all my training that I need to know about A&E. Okay, now I'm being let go and having patients on my own. I was in resus for the day. So if anything's stressful, it's that. But it was okay. It was okay. You learn a lot.
And for those of us that don't know what resus is, could you explain what that is?
Resus is where all the really, 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 really poorly people come when they first go into hospital.
And what would you say was like the most exciting like case that you or patient that you'd worked with in that time that you were in A&E?
I wouldn't. I've had some interesting patients. I don't want to bum you out, but a lot of my time spent with especially Freshers Week for uni students. If you don't know what that is, that's when they start and have a big massive party for 7 days. A lot of drunks, a lot of overdoses, and what else? I think the most interesting day for me was when I worked in resus and 3 people came with 3 different types of falls, and the fall that you wouldn't expect to end up the worst was the one that ended up the worst. Okay. So it was just shifts like that. It was more ones that made you think.
And then what would you say is like the most like, if there is like a boring part of the work that you do, what is the thing that's the most mundane and like routine and you're just like, actually I want to get over this?
Paperwork. Everything has to be paperwork. You say something to someone, you document it. I can see why, but paperwork takes you time and it takes you away from most of the stuff that you want to do is just get involved.
For sure. We've got some other questions, which is about what particular postgraduate degree did you apply for and why?
So a part of this course, well, a part of transferring to this GP course is because I don't know how to be a practice nurse. I have to learn to be a practice nurse. So they put you on a postgraduate in primary healthcare. So you know how to be a practice nurse, basically. So they teach me everything from doing reviews, history taking, child immunisations, knowing which vaccines to give and which ones not to give and when to give it. And especially when patients come from different countries, knowing how to catch them up on the UK schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, I chose primary health. Well, I've doing a postgraduate because the plan is to join the armed forces full time, and having a postgraduate kind of helps that process a bit better.
Amazing. And another question that we've got is, how many years has it taken you to get to where you are now?
How many years? I qualified. When did I qualify? I qualified in 2015, but I didn't start working until the January of 2016. So what are we in? 21. That's about 4 or 5 years, yeah.
Thank you. And kind of off the back of that, so thinking about all the years that it's taken you to get to where you are, if we think about like the beginning, and you spoke about that you were in college and you like did like the BTECs rather than A levels, and I know that sometimes some of the pupils that we work with can get a bit nervous and think that maybe they can't do things like nursing because they're doing like BTECs. But how do you think like your kind of studies at college really help prepare you for doing a nursing degree?
So I wasn't diagnosed as dyslexic until I was at college, and then once I was diagnosed, I went from doing A levels because all the time I was predicted high grades, but when it came down to it, I never got to it. So I picked a topic that was easier, which was kind of like a BTEC, which is coursework, which I kind of excelled at because I had the time and was able to write and do it. And then I thought I couldn't get into uni doing a BTEC. I went through that and I was like, it turns out you can get into uni doing a BTEC. They do accept it because it's equivalent to some of the A levels. And to be fair, the BTEC that I got was probably better than some of the A levels that some other people on my course got.
Nice. We've just got another question, but on the back of that is like, what BTECs did you take at college?
I did a BTEC in applied science, so I did all the sciences, physics. They added in maths, biology, biochemistry, everything.
And then thinking about you applying to do like the nursing degree, what things, like if, let's say we think about people who want to apply, like what things did you have to like put in your application? What was the interview process like?
Okay, they've probably changed it since I've done it. So when I applied, I went through UCAS like everyone else. I put down my options. I picked University of Birmingham, University of Wolverhampton, University of Nottingham twice because I applied for the masters and applied for the normal degree. And then interview wise, I got given an interview for the University of Wolverhampton. I went there and it was the easiest interview I've ever had, to be honest. They were like, your grades are good, your volunteering's good, you seem like a good person, we'd like to take you. So sometimes your interview could go like that and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends. Whereas when I went to the University of Nottingham, I didn't have an interview for the bachelor's degree because I already got accepted onto the master's degree. So with the master's degree, they just showed me around the uni, really. And that's pretty much it. Whereas everyone else that I then came onto the bachelor's degree were talking about, they had group discussions, they had interviews, people asked them questions and stuff like that. And then in terms of applying, I'm not the best at writing personal statements, so I used a lot of Google. So Google is there to help you if need be. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a sad story or this is why I'm doing this. They just want to know that you're just a genuine, caring person, really.
Thank you. And on the back of that, we've got a question, which is, what qualities are really important for nurses?
I would say patience and compassion.
Have you found that there are some points where you've had to be even more patient? Is that like a regular thing, or is it that sometimes it depends on the cases that you get?
It depends on the cases you get, but sometimes you have to have some real patience for some of the patients.
And on the back of that as well, have you ever had to deal with difficult patients? And if so, how would you calm them down?
Difficult patients. Let's see. When I used to work in A&E, the difficult patients would be the drunks, but for some strange reasons, they always seemed to like me, so I could just talk to them like a normal person, like we're talking now, and that would just be fine. When I used to work in oncology, however, difficult patients used to get angry, aggressive, shout, and stuff like that. All you can say is, look, I hear what you're saying, but it's not my fault, but I'll try and help you the best way I can. And that generally seems to work. Offering tea or biscuits, that generally seems to work as well.
And kind of off the back of that as well, so you worked in oncology. What was like the most challenging part about working with the patients in that department compared to the other places you've worked?
So in oncology, we used to do a thing called new assessments, which is where once they've been diagnosed by the doctor and told that they need to have chemotherapy, they'll come to this new assessment where we'll sit down and chat for them for an hour, tell them the whole process of what they're going to have treatment-wise, what treatment they're having and what side effects. But sometimes a lot of these patients would come only being diagnosed probably a couple of days ago and not really knowing what happens. So some of the times I'd have to sit there and let them cry. Some of the times I'd have to send them back to their consultants. It's a bit sad and shameful because I only had an hour and then I had back-to-back appointments like I kind of do now. But yeah, that was the hardest one, when some of them probably didn't even know what type of cancer they had.
Oh gosh, that's tricky. And how do you deal with like your well-being after that? Like, how do you like go home and like shake the day off, if there's a better phrase?
I learned to shake the day off when I was in A&E. Basically, you see a lot, so you learn to shake the day off. Oncology, I had a lot of friends and work colleagues around, which was supportive. But normally, yeah, I can go home and switch off and do something that I like to do, take my head away from work, and then once I'm back in work, it's back in it again.
For sure. We've got other questions, which is around what other jobs can you take on to work in a hospital? Say you want to work in a hospital environment, but maybe nursing's not the thing. Are there any other jobs that you can do to work in a hospital?
Yeah, you can be a cleaner, you can be a cook, you can be a porter. Those are the ones that take people around on their beds and chairs. If you want to work in Costa or WH Smith, that's in the QE. Yeah, you can work in biochemistry labs, you can work in pathology labs, you can, if you really want to, work with deceased patients in the morgue. You can work in, they've got some, what have they got? They've got multi-faith rooms. I had to think of the word then. They've got multi-faith rooms. So, yeah, you can be a priest, a rabbi and work in there. So there's definitely loads of other places that you can work within the hospital, not necessarily patient-facing, but still kind of patient caring.
For sure. And on the back of kind of working in a hospital, someone else has asked about, because you spoke about doing applied science, and someone's asked, is health and social also a good choice? And what about if you're only doing biology instead of all the sciences?
No, you don't need to do all the sciences. I think when I applied, I think you only had to do one or two, but I know a few people that did health and social care. I think health and social care was quite a good access to it. And I think they also do an access to nursing course if you think you struggle with grades as well. And then got the route of you can be a nursing associate, so you can work whilst training to be a nursing associate. So it's similar to being a nurse, but not quite a nurse.
Oh, and can you do that? Like, how do you get to be like a nursing associate, for example?
I'm not sure of the route because it's new. I think it's only the last year or two. But most people that I know that were training to be nursing associates were working as either like healthcare assistants or stuff like that, and just applied through work.
And is it the case that you have to do science? And if you're not, is there a way to transfer courses in uni?
That will depend on the uni that you're applying to. I don't know what you want to apply with. So I can't help you with that one. What is it that you want to apply with?
Sophia, if you give us some more context, actually, Ash might be able to help you and give you more of a detailed answer there. But we can definitely come back to that question. Another question around applications is, because I know you mentioned about volunteering with St. John's Ambulance, if I'm correct, and like the importance of volunteering. Of course, at the moment, it's probably quite tricky, right, for loads of the students that we work with to find opportunities to volunteer. But would you say, number one, it's like really important, and two, are there any other things that they can do, like work experience, to help with applications for like nursing?
I know after I finished, they kind of made it compulsory that you do some sort of caring before applying. I think they've got their purpose of trying to weed out the people that don't want to be there and the people that do want to be there, if that makes sense. So it's just so you have that skills set before you start. You can do St. John's. I also said that I volunteered in the hospital. I just walked around giving tea and coffee to patients and filling out surveys. You can, if you want, once you reach a certain age, do work experience. But I think that's probably for like 2-4 weeks. And I think I remember someone telling me that they wanted it for a bit longer. But any type of caring role, literally anything.
And let's say if you wanted to apply to volunteer at a hospital, like how do you go about that? Is there a way you can contact people? Like, do you kind of just like use Google and like find contact, insert hospital?
Most hospitals, if you go on their website, normally have a volunteer page and it says join us. I know if you live in Birmingham, the QE has one because that's where I did mine.
Nice. Sure. We've got a response from Sophia, who said that I'm doing geography, history and psychology, but have always been into medicine and has worked with St. John's Ambulance, the Red Cross and lifeguarding, but not sure if there's a transfer course for her to be able to start going into nursing.
Psychology? Is it psychology, she said?
Yeah.
That's fine. Technically a science. But if you ask a psychologist, they'll probably say it's not a science. That would create a big argument. I don't want to create an argument. But yeah, psychology will count. Geography and history, is that the other one?
Yeah.
A bit out there, but obviously you've got your volunteer stuff. So all I say is when you're ready to apply, or now even before you're about to apply, just click on some of the universities that you'd like to go to, and they've got their admission criteria on there and what they accept and what they don't accept, so you just know what you're working with beforehand. But definitely, if that's the case and you want to go into nursing and some of the universities are not allowing you with what you've got, there are access to nursing courses that you can do to get on there. It may mean an extra year or so for you, but if that's what you want to do, then yeah, go ahead.
Hopefully that was great. That was actually a great answer. Thank you so much, Ash. Hopefully that was really useful, Sophia, because you got like targeted advice right there. Hopefully that's something that you can carry away with you. We've got other questions, which is just around knowing what field. How do you know what field you want to work in?
You don't. Most people come in saying they want to work in this field, and then once they've worked in a different field, they're like, oh, I want to stick here. Like I said, I always wanted to work in A&E from the minute that I went in, but now I no longer work in A&E. Occasionally I do miss it, but I like where I am now.
And let's say if you wanted to become a paediatric nurse, is it the case that you would go to university, you would do like the nursing degree and then you specialize afterwards, or is there like a specific university degree that you'd have to do?
So you do child nursing. So when you apply to uni, whereas I applied for adult nursing, you'd apply for child nursing.
And then in terms of a career potentially in radiography, would volunteering at St. John's Ambulance still be something that could be used as experience if you wanted to apply for that?
Yeah, still can. Yeah, anything counts.
Amazing. And kind of just go back, because I thought it was really interesting when you spoke about considering medicine and then potentially becoming a paramedic and then like settling on nursing. What made you kind of think that maybe not medicine, maybe not paramedic, and actually nursing is the one that works for me?
So originally I wasn't going to choose a healthcare course, but my friend suggested, why don't you try St. John's Ambulance? I think you'll like it. And I liked it. At first, while I was throughout high school, I thought I was going to go into forensic science. After that, my interest started changing. And I thought, okay, medicine. And then I thought 5 years at uni is way too long. I thought 3 years for a nursing degree was way too long. And then my mom's a nurse, not the reason why I got into nursing, and my auntie's a nurse. Both of them told me not to do nursing, but in the end, I ended up doing it anyway. You just find what suits you, kind of. It's hard to say, but it kind of makes sense once you're going through the application process and what you want to do.
Sure. And what happens if, let's say, you do a nursing course and you've done the training, and then you decide potentially I want to be a doctor? Do you have to do a specific course in order to make that transition, or because you've now done nursing, there is like an easier way to kind of like shift between the two roles?
So the thing is, once you've done nursing, you will always have that degree. So if you went into something else and came back, you'd always have that. You just have to do a kind of like top up, which probably takes 6 months to a year, and then you can be a nurse again. With medicine, so the thing is, if you've already got a degree with some of the degrees, you can do a shorter version of the degree. But again, it will be looking on the website of the unis that you want to go to and seeing what their application process is and what they accept.
On the back of, you just mentioned that your mum and your auntie didn't recommend nursing to you. Someone asked, why did they not recommend it to you?
So my mum quit nursing. Not saying this happens to everyone, because she was working with some patients and got attacked while she was at work, but that was because of the type of patients she was working with. So she came out of nursing, plus she had me, and I was pretty much a young kid at that point. So, and then my auntie, she says don't go into it, but she's been doing it for years and she's not quitting anytime soon, even though she's at retiring age.
Oh gosh. I think that's what interesting is, one of those things that you feel, you hear those stories and you're just like, oh my goodness, and it could be off-putting, but I'm glad that you've managed to stick with it, Ash. And what is actually a bit, I'm so curious as to what it has been like during COVID. Has it got, we make the assumption it's been busier, but it would be great to kind of hear what your perspective has been like working during a global pandemic.
So I was still working in the hospital during the pandemic, and the thing they wanted to do with oncology is move it out of the main hospital. So I spent a lot of time moving equipment from the main hospital to a different building off-site, so we could still keep them and give them treatment. At the beginning of lockdown, it was pretty slow to begin with. Okay, they had to make a very tough decision about who has treatment and who doesn't. I wasn't involved in that decision, so don't ask me questions about it. And then as lockdown started to reduce, it picked up, so it became busier and busier and busier. And obviously, with those that weren't diagnosed before lockdown, were diagnosed during lockdown but couldn't have treatment, all that backlog of patients then came into the system. So that got quite busy, quite fast. And we did end up expanding to take on large amounts of patients. And then I moved from the hospital to the GP during July. That's just as we were coming out of the second lockdown, is it? I think. I can't remember. And it was different. Still seeing patients, but obviously they only get let in when they've got an appointment, otherwise they don't get let in. So there's not people walking in and out, but it was the same with the hospital. There wasn't people walking in and out. You were only there if you had to be there. I wish I could have some furlough, but again, a bit of peace of mind knowing that I can come to work and get away from what's at home.
Sure. We've got final few questions, which is around GCSEs. So someone's asked, are GCSEs that important? And they've asked, and should you do something called MOOCs, which I'm not sure what that means. So if you could let us know what that means, that would be really helpful. But are GCSEs that important is a question.
They're not. They are important, but they're not that important, if that makes sense. They do look at them, but it isn't to the extent that you have to have 10 GCSEs A star to C. I think they just look at the basic ones, so your maths, your science, and your English. But again, when logging onto your uni, whichever one that you want to apply for, all the criteria is there. But obviously GCSEs have changed now.
Yeah, they're number grades now, so 9 to 1, I think. Someone else has asked, what's the minimum grades for your GCSE that you need?
Depends on what uni you apply for. I'm not gonna lie, it depends on what uni you apply for. I'd say C, grade C, but I don't know what that one is in numbers. Maybe you might get away with a D, but that depends on if your A-level results are really good.
Yeah, so that's around like so that's grade 4 or 5 if you're kind of going with like the new style of GCSE. And how much UCAS points are needed? Like, how many do you need to have as a minimum?
Again, it depends on where you're applying for. This was so many years ago. I think it was 180. I think it might have been 180. But again, it will say so when you look on the university website to whichever university you're applying to.
Sure. Definitely look at university websites, guys, because actually they just tell you everything, which is really helpful. Someone else has asked a question, which is, what is the pay like? And
pay. Okay. Let's see. So recently it's been a lot better for newly qualified. It's not the best, but it's a lot better. Again, a lot of people say they're not in it for the money. I'm really not in it for the money. I'm happy. The money that I've got does what it needs to do. But as you progress, you get paid more anyway. So the more years experience you get, the more money you've got. The more you go into management is the more money you get. It just depends on what level you want to be at. If you're happy being a band 5, which is like a normal nurse, just caring for patients, doing your thing, then you can work yearly increments. You go to the top of the band and then you're happy. If you want to progress more or earn more money, then you'll have to go into management and leadership kind of levels.
And with like the starting salary, is it depending on what type of nursing you do and where you do it, or is it pretty much like when you start, like all nurses are pretty much on the same band?
All nurses are pretty much on the same band, I think, unless you work inside London. I think you get more money. Just rate of living is more.
So the person who asked about GCSEs and are they important, they said that MOOCs are like online courses you can do, which I'm assuming they're pretty much like equivalents to GCSEs. So do you think that's something that could work if you wanted to apply for nursing?
Online courses, I'm not entirely too sure about. I know when I was applying, it was a thing to have GCSEs and A levels or an A level equivalent. That was really good. With the whole COVID thing, they might make it very much easy for everyone to get into uni and do their thing. So just really look on that website for whichever uni you want to apply for. All that information will be there.
And I've got two last questions. So the first one is it possible to work in nursing if you do a BTEC Applied Science Extended Certificate, or does it have to be a BTEC Applied Science Extended Diploma?
It depends on the points that you get, isn't it? Because the certificate still gives you UCAS points. So if you get enough points with your certificate, I don't see why not. But again, that university will tell you what they need. But as long as you hit all the criteria, I think they normally say A levels, BTEC or equivalent, and then give you the UCAS points that you've got to get.
I did say this was going to be the last question, but someone just popped one in before. And I know you mentioned about joining armed forces. So this actually would be kind of great to get your opinion on. Is that with your qualification, is that something that you could work abroad and just do quite easily? Or is it something that you would have to do a different qualification?
So with my nursing degree, while we were still in Europe, I could work abroad in any European country. If I was working somewhere like America, I think I had to do a top up. I think if I want to work in somewhere like New Zealand or Australia, I think it's accepted. So it's accepted because it's done in the UK a lot more places than if you went somewhere else and did it, if that makes sense.
Nice. And the final question, thank you so much for joining us, is what would you say is like your top tip and advice for our pupils who've joined us today about applying for nursing? Like, what's the top tip you'd give?
Chill out. It's not as stressful as you think. Just take it one step at a time. Just pick what uni you want to go to. Okay, pick what course you want to do. Once you've done that, then look at what grades you need to do, and then go from there. Don't stress. It's a chilled process.
That is so great to hear, because I feel like a lot of people, even in my head, I was thinking, oh my God, like you're applying for nursing, it's like high stress, high level, but big chill out is like definitely one of the best things that we can hear. Thank you so much, Ash, for joining us this afternoon. It was honestly like you've answered all of our questions, and I'm sure like loads of people are going to have loads more, which I can definitely like pass on. But I know especially because like you're busy and you've kind of showed us your office as well, which is really cool. But thank you so much for joining.
No problem.
No worries.
Nice doing it.
And we've got some thank you. Someone just said thank you for all the advice and stuff.
No problem.
If you do have any other questions, guys, and it pops up in your head, what I will do after this is I will be writing up a blog, and there will be a link for you to ask any questions, and that's stuff that I can pass on. And next month we'll actually be doing another medicine one as well, but we'll send out an email so you know about that. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a lovely evening.